from 3 to 4. And that small change made it so that players are actually saying the opposite, especially the pro players. So that actually shows our balance is really tight. And because of that, we're only going to make small changes at this point.
Yeah, we'll be cautious going forward, unless we find out something's horrible. But assuming that doesn't happen, we're going to be a little cautious.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Excalibur Z. I made the long ladder analysis thread on Battle.net forums. I'm the multiplayer and esports MVP, and it's a pleasure to finally meet you guys. My question is, what besides the hidden matchmaking rating influences player ranking, promotion, and matchmaking?
You want to take this one, Josh?
Yeah. So I think a lot of what you've already posted is pretty... I mean, I can't come out and say everything is accurate, I guess, to put a stamp of approval on it, but it's close enough to make pretty good guesses at what's going on there. As Greg said yesterday, when you play a match, and similar to what you've seen in WoW arenas, we look at your ladder points and we compare that to that skill rating in the back end. In addition, something you may not know is, or you may have guessed at, is bonus points don't have any role at all in that update. Aside from that, we do have to do some other bits of math to look at the fact that you are in different leagues and the fact that the skill of your division actually does come into play. But other than that, you pretty much have you have enough knowledge there to understand what's going on within your division, which is where we want you to focus. In addition, as we come out with the Masters League and the Grandmasters League, something that you might think is really cool about the Masters League is so right now when you rank people across all of Diamond League, those rankings are not exactly accurate. In the Masters League, if you do that, you can trust those a lot more.
Thanks for the validation.
Hello.
Hi.
I was sitting behind you yesterday during the Huck Loner game, and I started thinking, when you guys are out here watching the games, are you guys watching it as the developers and the balancers, or are you guys trying to separate yourselves and just sit back and enjoy the game?
I'll speak for myself. I'm just trying to be a fan at that moment. If I see something horribly go wrong, I would probably switch to developer mode immediately and freak out. But other than that, I'm just screaming and cheering and enjoying the game like everybody else. What are you guys?
As a balance perspective, I think we're always kind of turned on in the sense like we're always looking for stuff that's breaking what we have going on in our heads, you know, like, oh, how's he using roaches? Like, we didn't intend that at all. But I definitely watch as a fan, and I mean, I didn't see anything go horribly wrong, so I'm pretty happy.
For me personally, I watch a lot of pro games. I not only watch all the major tournament games, but pros actually send us replays for us to watch as well. So because of that, when I'm watching these games, I'm not really surprised by the tactics they use. So I'm just watching to confirm the balance of our game.
And one quick one. When you guys are out on your...
Catch us after, man. Catch us after. We'll be right here. You catch us after. We'll do it, all right?
I think that guy's wearing a Snuggie. I'm not sure. I was going to say terrible PowerPoints, but they're not. Those are awesome PowerPoints you guys have.
Thank you, sir.
That's really good. My question is, and I was listening to the Protoss versus Terran balance you guys are looking at. Do you guys think the warp gate technology and how fast the TOS player gets it is somewhere you want it to be? Because I get the feeling that, and oftentimes, the Protoss can force a macro game very early and very quickly, and I don't want anybody to mess with the gate stuff because I think it's awesome. It's a unique ability, but at the same time, I'm like, man, I got to fight all that stuff again.
Right.
I just built 6 barracks, and I still can't keep up with 4 warp gates.
Right.
So I'm curious, what's your opinion on the warp gates? Are they where you want them to be?
Well, we're always trying to make everybody feel as broken as we can, right? Like, every race should feel insanely overpowered, and yet somehow it all works. So I'm hopeful that we're there. They've actually been nerfed quite a bit over the last year, I would say. So I'm hopeful, but I think they're okay. What do you guys think?
I think every race has a broken mechanic. Like, Zerg puts down a Spire, a Hydroden, and a Roach Warren, and then you're fighting 200 pop Roaches, and then 2 minutes later you're fighting 200 pop Mutas. Like, you just don't know what's coming. So I think it's actually in a pretty good spot right now.
What I'm noticing at the, especially pro level, is we're seeing less and less of all these warp bin rushes that you're speaking about. And I think the reason for this is because warp bin rush is a very different type of all-in rush that people aren't used to from Starcraft or even War 3. And top players are actually figuring out ways to counter it pretty easily. And I think eventually the skill required to master this will trickle down to the lower levels as well. And hopefully it'll be balanced for across all levels of play.
Hi. Do you think the Hunter-Seeker mixer are underused? Well, it was a very cool spell before, but now I think it cannot do any more terrible damage.
Oh, nice.
The Hunter Seeker was actually a spell that was causing a lot of trouble in the late game. Terran players were actually able to just take maybe 1 or 2 expansions, lock those 2 down with mass planetary fortresses as well as mass siege tanks, and all you do is just make ravens on the offensive to trade their mana for enemy resources by just being able to kill everything, right? So because of that, we had to actually nerf it because that kind of degenerate gameplay is not what we're looking for.
Yeah.
But and at the same time, not every single spell in the game has to be generally useful in every single situation. And we feel that in specific situations, for example, if you're playing against Zerg and he makes a lot of Mutalisks, having a few Ravens casting Hunter Seeker is very useful. So we feel that as long as different abilities are very powerful in specific situations that happen on a fairly regular basis, that's a very good spot for that spell.
We're definitely not, to your point, we're definitely not saying used a lot. I don't think we're going to buff it in the immediate future because of the problems David talked about. And we're going to kind of wait and see on that one to see what the community does with it. We're often surprised by you guys when you suddenly start using something that nobody ever used before and you're doing just a ton of damage with it. So we're going to wait and see on that one. But there's no plans to buff it immediately, even though I tend to agree. It only sees uses in a couple of scenarios.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
All right, my question has to deal with the life cycle of a patch and how much leeway you give into professional gamers in order to develop new strategies. Say the Roach range from 3 to 4 right before GSL. How do you give them enough time to say, okay, I'm going to change this now in order to, develop better strategies?
Well, I think the answer to that is we really need a server that's sort of separate for those guys to play on so they can choose whether they want to play the old patch or the new patch. And that's the technology we're looking to. I think it's our long-term solution. We have announced in the past what we're going to do in advance, and then it took us like a month to get that patch out at the end of the day. This last one we kind of sprung on people, but we did have David and Matt Cooper went out there and made sure that we were looking at only the earliest versions of some of these tournaments, right? That GSL, I think, was in the earliest rounds when that one first went out.
Yeah, it was right after the preliminaries, but we were aiming for right before the preliminaries.
Right, so we missed a little bit on that one. But we're trying to get it, obviously, until we get that tournament server where people can choose which patch they want to play on, we're definitely right now just trying to target times where we'll do the least amount of damage to any major tournaments. Of course, there will come a day where there are I hope there will come a day where there are no tournaments out there there's no time for it. There's always a tournament, right? And there's always something major going on. And by that time, we better have that tournament server up and running.
In the last few patches, you've made a number of changes to both Roaches and Reapers that have almost completely killed off the early Reaper attacks against Zerg. But do you think that might have been too hasty and not given the community enough chance to really figure out strategies to counter that? Because in the recent GSL, Fruit Dealer kind of showed a lot of Zerg players that we may be playing the race wrong, and this patch, or these series of patches may have just been too hasty. Do you feel that way?
For the Reapers change specifically, as we talked about in this presentation, our main focus is on the competitive level, but we do care about other levels as well as other game types as well. And in this case specifically, especially in team games, we are seeing that at the very highest level, Terran plus Zerg teams were almost 50% of the top teams in both US and Korea. And these teams are actually using this very specific fast mass Reaper with mass speed upgraded Zergling strategy. And if the number gets that high, if the number becomes I mean, 50% of the teams are out there
dominant,
are just
and their win ratios were
Yeah.
insane, right? Like these guys could not be stopped. And actually, it wasn't even just at the highest levels of play. It was a lot of levels of play. 2v2 was just being trashed specifically by the Reaper.
and it's almost to the point where you can't play 2v2s at a high level unless you pick this combination, right? So that's why we decided to nerf the Reaper. And on the flip side, for one-on-one, we felt that there's too many opening options for the Terran before the opponents can actually scout them. For example, all these different proxies, such as Reaper proxy, double gate, double barracks, Marine, bunker rush, as well as like a fast Hellion push or even a drop, Banshees, repair, Thor repair rush, all these options. So we actually wanted to limit these options. And because Reapers were a problem in 2s, we were actually able to hit that in 1v1 as well.
I'll also say as well, if you've watched any of the matches that have been going on the stage over there, I've seen a shocking number of Reapers today against Zerg players. So, I don't know. We'll wait and see. I agree the damage was high. And we did it a little bit on purpose, knowing that we were hurting the Reaper maybe more than some of our Terran brothers and sisters would have liked. But I'm not sure the Reaper's just out yet. We're going to have to wait and see what happens.
First of all, big fan. Dustin, I love it when you cast games.
Oh, thank you, sir.
I think if the Blizzard thing doesn't work out for you, you have a career in casting.
Thank you, sir.
My question is regarding the what I perceive to be an imbalance between the Thor and Ultralisk. Both these units cost the same. Both are kind of like the end weapon for these races. But the Thor can be repaired. It can shoot air. And as far as I know, it can beat the Ultralisk one-on-one. Is this correct? I saw this on a YouTube video. And it was like three Ultralisks on 3 Thors, and the Thors won. Do you feel like there's any kind of imbalance there?
The Thors are actually supposed to win because Ultralisks are a splash unit, and we don't try to make those 2 units identical. Thors are actually are the best against heavy groups of clumped up air units, light air units such as Phoenix or Mutalisk, whereas the main role for the Ultralisk is to kill large groups of small ground units. So that's why you're seeing the difference there. And for every single unit in the game, our main focus is to try to give it a unique and specific role, and we don't try to make 2 units in different races roughly equal.
Yeah, and the other thing too is a lot of Zerg units are a little weaker ultimately than their counterparts, and that's largely because of Zerg's ability to build such a powerful economy. Zerg in many cases do need to engage with a larger force, maybe even a significantly larger force to be successful. And since the Zerg can also save up a huge amount of larvae, which was not the case in Brood War, you can often hit the opponent with a 200 pop army and follow it immediately with a 120 to 150 pop army, right, before he can even think about replacing his losses. And so that's sort of the strength of the Zerg. The Ultralisk doesn't need to win head-to-head against anyone. He's got 7 buddies with him. And that's what he wants to do to sort of run over the opposition.
Thank you.
We have time for about 1 or 2 more questions.
Hey guys, I love the Slayer's Boxer fruit dealer match last night. It was awesome.
Awesome.
When I was going home, I kind of thought to myself, hey, if Boxer was maybe spawned in cross-map locations, he might have done a little bit better. I was wondering, do you take stats that are relevant to player spawn locations? And I mean, I know kind of law of large numbers, maybe it kind of works itself out, but I couldn't help but think maybe that has some impact on the metagame. What do you think?
It's a really great question. I don't know if we have those stats. I'm not certainly seeing them in my daily reports about the balance, but map balance is extremely real. Right? It's a big factor what's going on, and we could make the game perfectly balanced, I suppose, if we picked one map and never moved it from that. But we do want this versatility and variability in gameplay, so you do have to learn different matchups, not only by race, but also by spawn position. So we do create a variable maps with different balance points on them, but we are in constant watch out for maps that sort of get a little too far off the line, right, where it's a little too easy for one race to have an advantage. We've actually recently cut a couple maps from ladder play, even though we love these maps, but specifically because there was just too many imbalances with specific matchups on those matches. We swapped other maps in. So, yeah, map can have a significant impact, and it's definitely one of the variables we watch when doing a lot of balance.
Yeah, we do track, in those adjusted win percentages, we track an adjusted win percentage per matchup per map. And if that goes crazy, we would take a much closer look. When we were first looking at what type of stats to gather in order to make sure the maps were fair, I worked closely with the map designers, and I asked them, do you want on location, like location-based win percentage type stuff also? And they said, you know, that might be drilling down too far, but if if we got into a situation where it was obviously favoring a race, then we could drill down more.
Makes sense. Thank you.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you for attending the StarCraft 2 multiplayer panel. Coming up here.